and welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable, real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Estate Mogul MD. My name is Brett Riggins. I'm an investor. I'm an entrepreneur. My wife calls me a serial entrepreneur. As of late, I'm also an author, and I have the privilege of speaking with medical professionals and high-income earners, as well as other investors. And today, we're here to share the real-world journeys along with the to-dos, more importantly, the not-to-dos. I actually have the opportunity today of speaking with a board-certified internist and a sports medicine physician working out of Houston, Texas. He's a huge proponent of healthy work-life balance and finding purpose in serving his patients. Dr. Bala Ravi, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Excited to be here. I'm doing great. It's a good Friday today, so can't complain.
Awesome. And I see the sun is still shining there in Texas. Is that where you're sitting at right now?
That's correct. It's only 6:30, but we got a lot of sunlight today, so can't complain on that either.
Yeah, yep. So I'm actually in South Carolina and just outside of Charlotte, and it's just the weather's turning beautiful. Absolutely. Thing that's crazy here is pollen. Holy smokes, pollen! Like it just cakes on the cars.
Yeah, I have a pretty bad pollen allergy. I was taking a lot of Zyrtec the last couple of weeks, but thankfully in the Houston area, at least it's starting to come down. I can't say the same for some other areas, but it's around that time of year, you know.
My wife and my son, they battle that same thing, and it's just, but yeah, you have to turn the windshield wipers on to get it off your car. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, a lot of pollen out there, but thankfully we're turning the corner. At least over here we are.
Yeah. Well, along with that comes great weather, and kind of jumping right into this, Bala, is tell me a little bit about your journey. Like, I always love learning about what got you into medicine and, that path, that career education, and then into where you're at now.
Yeah, great question. Well, I mean, first of all, I grew up in the Houston area, so this is my hometown. I came back to work in. My route's a little different. It wasn't the standard route that you would see going to the medical school and everything here in the States. I actually, I did my school here. I went to high school in Houston. I did undergrad at University of Houston for a year. But I found out about this opportunity to reform med school in India. And I looked into it. Some of my friends were already in the program. They reached out to me, and I found it to be a good option for me to at least go to my home country where my parents are from, my grandparents are from, and get some time to spend and live in India for a few years. So I got a chance to do that I wouldn't have otherwise if I had gone through the network in the U.S. system. So I went to India for a few years for med school, and I actually did my clinical training there for a couple of years, came back and did my rotations in New York City and Georgia before finally settling into residency and then going on a fellowship in sports medicine. But I had a lot of fun along the way. It was a long journey. It took about, I would say 12, 13 years. But looking back at it, I think it was a good formative part of my life, and I'm really happy that it went that way. But really got me interested in medicine. You probably hear a lot of the cliche of trying to help people and do all those things. I really wanted to do that, but I wanted to do it in a way that obviously I would have fun in the process. And I was a big sports nut growing up. I watched a lot of basketball and, watched a lot of sports in general. And I was like, how do I merge the two things that I like to do? And sports medicine was a calling for me to just kind of have fun with it, but also enjoy the process and take care of patients at the same time. And so that's how I kind of became not only just a board certified internist, but a board certified sports medicine doctor. And I wanted to bring that back home and enjoy back in the Houston area. So I've been back here since 2018, 2019, and it's been good so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask you, and you answered it already, if you're a sport nut, because it's a given. You going into sports medicine that you love sports.
You have to. At least you have to have that passion for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I grew up playing sports as well too. We were a family of baseball. We definitely played baseball, and early on doing the early travel teams. Mm-hmm. I actually traveled and played in several states growing up playing ball. Yeah.
Nice. What position did you play? Just curious.
So this is funny. So I started off playing catcher and third base. Those were my spots. And then up to about little league. And then once the field started growing, I was a late grower. Like I grew so much my senior year. So all those years of like 13, 14, 15, I wasn't growing, but the field got bigger. So I kind of got pushed around then. I got moved to second base, right field, those kind of things, because I just couldn't keep up with the field.
Yeah, I've taken care of a few baseball players, mainly pitchers. They had a lot of rotator cuff and shoulder injuries just
Oh,
because
yeah.
of the repetition. So I've seen my fair share, but I have a lot of empathy for what you guys had to go through growing up and playing ball. That's not an easy sport to learn and play, but I'm
Yeah.
glad you did it.
Yeah. My shoulders definitely took a hurting, and then just making poor choices, as a kid too. I remember jumping off a diving board one time, going through a tube in the water, and it caught both my arms and, pulled them down. I think from that time forward, both of my shoulders. So I really babysit them when I go into the gym for sure.
Yeah. If you need help on that, let me know, man. I can help you out.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So on to medicine, that was a perfect journey from rotation to residency, and now where you're at in sports medicine is also very interesting. The story of going back to India and doing that. That's a unique story as well too. Very cool. So just a little bit about, I've not traveled there yet. What's the biggest difference between a hospital in India versus a hospital here in the States?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of similarities, I think, in just the medical care and what you can receive. Obviously, there can be a language barrier, but most of the time, everyone speaks English there in a major healthcare hospitals and the clinics. It's just there may be some second language that might take over for some of the local area residents, but majority of the time, most people they taught us in English while we were there in the medical school and also in the university. So I would say it's very similar. The only difference is there's more people there, so it can strain the system in that way, but the concepts are the same. The care equity may be a little bit different, but at the face value, everything seems to be on equal par in the U.S. system. The only difference is really location and then population. I think that was a major key difference.
And I've noticed I've traveled just a little bit, but it is so evident that English as a second language is just, I mean, that's just basic everywhere you go. And here it's I feel like you get English and then you complain because somebody else speaks a different language instead of learning that other language,
That's right. They actually teach the English curriculum when they're like in the early years of their formative education. So they actually learn their native tongue, whichever state they're from in India, with English as the main language that connects all the different states. Yeah. I mean, each state in India is like a different country in honesty with its culture and languages. And so English is actually the unifying language amongst different cultures within the country. So it's cool to see that carry over here. I'm actually trying to learn my mother tongue through my parents and taking formative classes for myself so that I can go back to India and talk in my native tongue to my family members. It's a work in progress, but they're
like, listen to this
patient.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Very patient with me. So I'm only in my 30s. I still got a ways to go, but we'll make it. We'll make it work.
Now, have you tried Duolingo? I know with their different types of languages and different accents and offshoots, but does Duolingo provide that platform for you?
Yeah, I've tried it. Personally, it hasn't worked out for me. Not to say it hasn't helped other people, but I'm actually just doing I'm doing a YouTube course with someone who speaks the native tongue, and so it helps me to kind of read and write, but also speak it at the same time. So it helps to kind of ingrain it in my brain to learn it a little bit faster. My wife and I are doing it together, so it's kind of it's a nice little bonding experience, but we're also just kind of carry it forward when we go back to go visit.
Absolutely. Now, there's another thing called Preply that we've done before. So Preply is it's a very cost-effective way to hire like virtual trainers.
Something I got to look into then. Yeah.
Preply, Preply. Very cool. I know because I'm in the construction world. I'm so fascinated by how much I don't know because I can't understand what's going on. Spanish is spoken so much in the construction industry that it's like if you don't know Spanish, then most of the time the entire crew speaks Spanish and one person speaks English, and I don't like being that. I don't like being able to communicate.
Right. You want to be with everybody else. I totally get it. There's a huge Hispanic population here in Houston too, so I can definitely empathize.
Oh yeah. I for a short part of my career, I actually renovated Walmarts. So I
Oh, wow.
traveled, we did 6 weeks on and 1 week off. So we would go to a store and then renovate it. We would work 8 in the evening till 8 in the morning.
Mhm.
And we would do this for 6 weeks, take a week off and go. But we actually did Arclitex. So Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. So we traveled
Oh,
all the
cool.
way
Yeah,
through there.
that's
And
awesome.
seeing the world through Walmart, that's it's a crazy way to see the world, man.
Hey, it works. It works for you. That's great,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, it was interesting. Get a little dip into the commercial
That's right.
industry there. So, Bala, in your journey so far, what's been the biggest
Mhm.
challenge for you? What's like what, and we spoke a little bit before the show on
Mhm.
lifestyle and balance. What's been the biggest challenge for you so far?
Yeah, I think along the journey, you always have a set goal in mind of what you want to do, and sometimes things don't turn out exactly the way you wanted to. A lot of my colleagues, and for me personally, I would say trying to figure out how to apply sports medicine to the general population. So when I say that, people automatically assume, oh, you're going to become a team doctor for a professional organization or college organization. Not necessarily the case. I wanted to see how do I apply, how we treat athletes in this country to the general population, the weekend warrior, someone that doesn't necessarily fit that category because there's more of them, compared to the 0.1%, whoever is in the major leagues or whatever the case may be. So I really wanted to figure out how do I carry that over. And I found out after finishing fellowship and becoming an attending, I can do that by working with a multi-specialty group in an outpatient setting with an orthopedic surgery team, and also carry forward my internal medicine training by helping take care of the primary care field, patients coming in to see me. So I have a little bit of a hybrid practice, and my challenge is figuring out how to carry that forward. But I found a nice balance, I feel like, where I can do my primary care residency training, but also implement the sports medicine component. So I do see people, with a weekend warrior, people that have regular 9 to 5 jobs that have a special, interest in different kinds of sports who have concussions or, have knee pain, shoulder pain, and I'm able to merge the two. So initially, my major hurdle was trying to figure out how to do that and still feel like I'm doing something that's of service to the general population. And I think I found that niche now, and it's serving me well. So I think it's just a matter of how do you want to apply what you learned during training and then carry it forward so you feel like you're having a fulfilling service in the community. And I think I'm doing that right now.
Well, that's awesome. Now, I'm going to circle back on it and say, what's the biggest challenge that you face directly associated to the work-life balance aspect of it, whether it's time or money or relationships? And
Yeah.
then what have you learned from it? I love asking this question because,
Yeah.
there may be a listener out there who is, in residency right now or in med school. And it's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
let's watch out for that.
Yeah, obviously it's a time-consuming profession, right? You have to be really dedicated to your craft, and you have to figure out what your goals are. So, it's a multi-year journey, and the way I phrase it, I would make baby steps or baby goals in my mind of how would I orient my time to fulfill what I want to do. So, I knew going in, I'd mentally prepared myself going in that I would spend hours and hours on hours in education first, and then try to allocate some time during the week to at least do something outside of medicine that wasn't related to reading medical textbooks or, doing things like that. So during my time in India, luckily I was part of the basketball team for a few seasons there. They have recreational leagues that we got to be a part of. And so trying to balance that, I felt like for every 4 days that I would study or do something to prepare for an exam, I would take a day off just to not do anything related to medicine and just focus on things that I enjoyed doing. So we used to play basketball over there. Some of my friends would play cricket, and sometimes we would just basically just hang out and not worry about what we were actually doing as far as an education standpoint. So trying to find breaks every once in a while to give yourself that, patience and understand you're in it for the long term, but you still need some time to yourself and try to figure out things that you like to enjoy to do. I go to the gym frequently. I still maintain that, work ethic outside of work and medicine. So if you can do it for even like 10 to 20 minutes, I found that to be really helpful for me to maintain my long-term goals, which was to eventually become a physician. And I think that really helped me stay focused and stay disciplined outside of just studying medicine. So I think that time balance that you're mentioning, that wellness journey, you really got to find even 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there during the work week, during the school week to do things that you enjoy that are not necessarily related to what you're studying for or what you're working at. And that's what worked for me. And that would be playing basketball, watching a movie with a friend, or just going to the gym.
Work hard, play hard. And I know a lot of people
Right.
have heard that before.
It works.
I've listened to a lot of Jim Rohn's material. Jim Rohn, awesome guy. I don't know if you've heard of him before.
Heard of him,
Listeners
yeah.
probably hear me say it all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm a proponent for like having a Jim Rohn uh requirement in high school, and in high school and in college.
Like
Just
it.
that what you were mentioning is like you mentally prepared yourself. And that's a huge step. And everything that we do from investing to training and all this stuff, once you get your mindset there, and then that sets that light, that path forward. So once that light is shining on your goal, then you've got your mind right and you're headed that way. So
100%.
having that direction set forth of like 4 days on, 1 day off, that way you're focused. When I'm working, when I'm playing, I'm playing.
Right.
And that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah. It worked for me. I'm sure it can work for other people too.
Absolutely. That's a great piece of advice. What's been your biggest achievement or opportunity so far in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like there's a few. Being able to, I'm a big family guy. I love spending time with family and friends and just kind of being in a social circle. So I think an achievement for me was coming back home, being able to make it out of residency, graduating, having my degree, and being able to be close to my family and prioritizing that as a main thing that I need to do and spend time with my mom and dad every once in a while. They live only 30, 45 minutes away. I try to call them once a week and try to spend some time with them. So making sure that you're, staying with people that matter to you and staying humble and to the ground, I think that's really important. Another achievement I would think of outside of obviously becoming a physician, that was a huge achievement in my life personally and becoming board certified. But just carrying it forward, man, like serving the community is also, it's a very rewarding experience. And it's nice to be able to spread as much knowledge as you can to help other people without expecting much. Patients obviously come in to see me, but and they get a service and then they go home, but it just feels rewarding to be able to help them. And I feel like that's a personal achievement just from a day-to-day encounter, on top of being family oriented and just taking care of patients in general. So to me, I think getting the degree, staying active, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and then being close to my family and spending time with them, those are personal achievements in my book.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. The two great things, family orientated and paying it forward, giving back.
Right.
And that just awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in that mindset piece, kind of like getting your mind adjusted to this idea that you're going to be studying for a long time. Right. And that, to me, that's instantly delayed gratification. And there's two different types of us in this world, is those who can tolerate that delayed gratification and those who can. And I'm sure you've probably seen that study or the challenge where you put the candy down on the table and you leave the phone there recording, you walk away. Are you the kid who leaves the sweets there? Or are you the kid that snags it up, Well,
if I was a kid, if I was 5 years old, I probably would have snagged it. But now, as I got older, I'm like, you know what? Let me see what's out there. Let me wait it out a little bit.
It's so hard. And that, I mean, for me as an investor, and I always love reaching into this. We talked a little bit before the show too. You don't have that investment background, real estate background, right? But for me, that delayed gratification is a huge piece of it. So I started off flipping houses, and I'm sure you've seen the TV shows. You buy them, the worst house on the block, and you fix them up and you sell them. That was us. Like, we live a TV show. At one time, we were doing like 6 of them at a time, and
wow,
that
that's
was
a lot.
like, we don't do that anymore. I mean, we manage, it's a whole different thing now where we're managing renovations, buy and hold long-term stuff. But that idea is, which where the starts, like you get the candy closer to right away. The closest you can get it to right away is what we call wholesaling. And wholesaling is, I'm basically selling papers, when I say I'm flipping 2x4s, instead I'm flipping papers now. Right. Okay. So when I put a property in contract, I assign that to another buyer, I instantly get my gratification. I get my money. So that would be the front of the spectrum. The other is flipping. And then the other one is long-term holds, right? So you think to yourself, $200 a month in passive income, what is that? It's not. But if you have that mindset shift where it's about that stacked return, and you can delay yourself that gratification back. So you look 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, all of a sudden you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity, and it's an amazing piece. So tell me a little bit about where you're at in your journey, because, from where you're at, in your practice, right? In practicing medicine. So you're rather early, right? You're rather early in the journey because you've got through your career, education career, into medicine now. So it's on the front side of this thing. And we talked about something that happens a lot for physicians when you reach that point where your salary increases, right? And I kind of made a joke, well, that's when your expenses increase too. So you're right there. We're kind of like around in that point, right? Where it's, okay, now it's time to start thinking about the path forward and that passive income investment. So if you could just kind of let me know where you're at on that part of your journey.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I actually, one thing that we never learned in school is financial literacy, and it's something that I've actually started focusing more in on the last couple of years, reading a lot of books. I found, a few Dave Ramsey books. I read a few of those. I watched some YouTube videos. And, I think the important thing for us as physicians is to keep it simple, right? So just live, don't expend too much more than you make, right? And it's a very simple concept. And I started implementing that even after I graduated residency. I was very cognizant and conscious of lifestyle creep, especially as your salary exponentially increases after you finish your training. So I personally feel proud that I'm not putting too much out there as far as expenses. I'm still living like I would have off of resident salary, in my opinion. And I'm maxing out, I'm doing all the stuff that I would do for the long-term gains, like you mentioned, delayed gratification, maxing out the Roth IRA every year, maxing out the 401k, putting it in index funds, things that would, over the long run, overall should have a good return on investment, in my opinion, and pay down all the debt that I can as quickly as possible, and then just live comfortably, not worrying about that lifestyle creep that you mentioned. And so I think it really comes down to some level of ego, right? You don't want to feel like you have to satisfy someone else's expectation of where you're at. And as physicians, I can understand why people can get caught up in that, because like you mentioned, 10 to 12 years, we're always studying. And then some of our friends that are engineers, accountants, architects, they're already making big bucks once they're in their 20s. And we're like still studying up until our mid 30s. So trying not to get caught up in that lifestyle creep, like, hey, I'm owed what's mine now. I think it really will pay dividends in the long run. So that's kind of where I'm at, just short of that real estate investment opportunities yet. But I'm doing, I feel like, everything else in the time being.
Yeah, that's awesome. And in that path forward too, there's so much that you can learn from what's around you, I feel like, because I hear it all the time. I hear the financial literacy piece. I hear, where we're at in the journey, not ready, not prepared to take that next step, but the opportunities are always going to be around you. So one thing could be just keeping your eyes and ears open and thinking in the way of, just like you're saying. And I think it relates back to who you are as a person. That ability to delay gratification is you're already setting that mindset. You're already building that path forward, taking care of what you can. So just keeping your ears open when other people are talking about real estate or investments, diversifying, those kinds of things, and learning from them, from the people around you.
I agree 100%, man. I'm always learning, dude. I mean, like, I could tell you a lot of things about the shoulder and the knee, but like, I'm always looking to expand my knowledge base. And I'm trying to read a finance book at least once a month. So that's been my goal the last 6 months. And so I'm just trying to stay engaged in things that I wasn't really particularly keen or fond of learning growing up. But I realized, money's always around us. We do live by it. And sometimes we don't talk about it enough, especially in the culture that I grew up in. It really wasn't like table talk, right? It was more of like hush under the table, like, and you just have to assume you learn things as you go. Obviously, I'm trying to change that as I'm getting older and making sure it's not a taboo topic for certain people and cultures. And so that was part of my learning process. And I'm glad I'm coming around to it, because it matters in how we live our lives eventually and how comfortable we are, especially, closer to retirement age and things like that. So, I totally agree with you. I'm always keeping my eyes and ears open, and it's always good to learn new things that are not within usually, your 6 degrees or whatever the case may be.
Yep. Yeah. And it also relates to the pay it forward piece too, because once you have it and that willingness to share it with other people is a
Yeah.
big piece. The one thing I always stress, and I will stress now, is be careful who you're listening to, right? And I always align this with a story of going to Lowe's. Like, I would go to Lowe's and I'd ask somebody about this. Hey, I need this piece. What do you do for this? Oh, this should work. Right. Or, oh, try this. And it's like, that person does not know what they're talking about. And that
Right.
hurts more than just saying, sorry, man, I don't know. Right.
Yeah.
So I've come to the point where anybody says should, I will ask again, maybe rephrase the question, ask again, because that's telling me they don't know. Right. If they're not certain, they don't know. So be very, very careful who you're listening to.
100% agree. I think it matters who your circle is too.
Yep.
Like who you surround yourself with will really be important. But I agree with everything you just said. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm a proponent of, if I don't know, I'm going to tell you, right? I don't try to fluff anything up, and I'll let you know what's worked for me. I've got some colleagues that one of their businesses is called Results Driven. I absolutely love it. I love it because the results that they have, that's what they're driven by.
Okay.
I want to play a book game with you. I love the fact that you love reading books. I want to mention some to you.
Go for it. Yeah, let's do it.
The first one that came to mind, obviously, is Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yep. Read that.
And the Millionaire Next Door.
Read that. It came out in 96, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It was an older one. Why Doctors Don't Get Rich.
I just read that like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
One of my friends who's a family doctor, she's interested in cash flow quadrant and learning how to passive income, like you mentioned. And so she recommended that book to me, and we reconnected after 10 years. And so I read that last month.
Yeah. Very interesting. The Cash Flow Quadrant is another Kiyosaki book that's wonderful as well, too.
I got to check that one out. Yeah.
Yep. It's a great book. Well, there was one more I was going to say. The Millionaire Next Door. We got that one. Yeah. These are just the financial ones, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then obviously I will plug mine in there.
Go for it.
How to Get Rich as a Doctor.
Okay. I got to check that one out, man. That's the next one on the list.
It's on Amazon, and the crazy part is, like I was telling you, I'm not a physician, but my background is real estate, and in this book, it starts off in the mindset piece, right? Adjusting the mindset, and then going from there of what's what tendencies that physicians may have related to some of these other things you read in the books that we mentioned, the Millionaire Next Door and Why Doctors Don't Get Rich. Those things of, I need to drive a doctor's car, right? I need to do this, and it was just really interesting relating that, and then in that book, kind of giving a path forward for real estate acquisitions. Where can I start? And you could take anything from where you're at, right? You don't have to go out and buy a 20-unit apartment building next door. It's just listening. What's in the room? People are telling, are saying things. Colleagues are buying houses. You probably work with a lot of physicians that own real estate already. So just, getting up the nerve and continuing that conversation with them, and learning from those who are around you.
That's right. I totally agree with you. I was wrote another book there. It's White Coat Investor. I actually read that coming out of residency, written by an emergency medicine doctor who laid the foundation for me. That was my first financial book for me as a physician coming out, to understand the name of the game and things that we already talked about here.
Yep. So they just had the White Coat Investor. They call it WCI Con.
Oh, okay.
Comic Con. It was just out in Arizona. We had one of our team members go out there. So definitely an interesting growth. There's a lot of things that go on there. That's kind of like in the investing world, we always mention bigger pockets. Mm-hmm. So if you've heard of that, that's also another great spot to learn.
Yeah, I've got a list. I've written down on my Amazon wish list here, so I'm going to hit them one by one. But I'll add the one that you mentioned earlier too.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Is there anything that you have going on right now, Bala, that you could let the listeners know about, or that you would love to just talk about? Yeah,
I have a strong passion for sports medicine, as we talked about. I deal with a lot of concussion care, and I just to let you know, I did a TED Talk on concussion care a couple of years ago, and and it still serves me well, because I get some referrals and people coming to ask me questions. And concussion care is really important. It's really close to my heart, and I really want that same level of care that we talked about treating athletes to the general population. And how do we help people, especially coming out of motor vehicle accidents or just simple falls? I see a lot of people over the age of 65 who actually have a lot of fall risk, and they end up having concussions. And it's a very common topic. And so it's something that I really care about, and I try to carry forward. So I'm trying to bring that knowledge base to the more of the public domain. But that's something that I really have a lot of admiration for teaching and spreading the word. So I try to help people as much as I can. So if anybody has any questions about that or wants to learn more about it, that's something that I've been more than happy to share.
Awesome. Where can the listeners maybe get access to that TED Talk or reach out to you, or do you have a website?
Yeah, so I am working on it right now, but you can watch it on YouTube. It's if you go to TEDx Buffalo, I actually did it during my fellowship, right after my fellowship year, TEDx Buffalo, and you just put my name in the search engine, it will pop up. Rethinking concussion care and how we approach treating concussions rather than the outdated form that's been going around for a while.
Now, I warned you, I'm not a physician, so the question just popped into my mind. Is there any correlation or relation to what happens in the brain when concussion occurs and when dementia is occurring?
So they're still studying the correlation between, I know where you're trying to get at. They're trying to study the correlation between the football players and CTE, and does that cause long-term cognitive brain damage over time? And the hypothesis right now is it is, but we're still trying to prove that consistently from an evidence-based standpoint. Now, there are some studies happening in Boston, and they're doing autopsies of brain and things like that to show protein depositions and aggregates that are consistent with CTE and seeing if that has any long-term damage. But I think it's safe to say that potentially there is, but I can't tell you with 100% evidence-based medicine to support that just yet. But I will say that, any contact sport, any concussion repetitively over time, it can cause long-term damages or has increased potential to do so. I usually tell people if you've had one concussion, then you're theoretically more at risk to have another one. And for it to be more of a longer delayed healing time compared to the first time that you ever had it. And it takes into context, how did it happen? What was the time of injury? How long did it take for you to have these symptoms? All those play a role in the healing process in general. But it's really individualized. But in general, I tell people you are more at risk for having a subsequent concussion if you've already had one to begin with. But there are protocols that we have in place to help shorten the healing time and to get people back to doing what they want to do. If that's, going to work every day, being able to look at a computer, going to school, or even playing the sport that they love. So it's very individualized, but there is a potential correlation, but I can't tell you 100% just yet.
Yeah. The never-ending journey of the brain, it absolutely fascinates me for sure.
Yeah.
Fascinates me for sure. So the TEDx talk can find you, and you're working on the website. That's interesting.
Work in progress.
Yeah. I know how that goes for sure. That's about all I've got for today. I've really enjoyed our time. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, Bala, and your journey. I appreciate you sharing your journey with us, me and the listeners here, and your attention today as well too. I know I always hear that time is the most valuable asset we have. Well, time is actually not anything. It's not worth anything unless you have the attention to go along with it, because I can give you all my time in the world, but if I don't give you my attention, you're not getting anything out of it, right?
I 100% agree.
Thank you for your attention. I appreciate that. So next episode, we're actually speaking with Mr. Destry Witt. He's a real estate investor, specialized in commercial real estate and financial advisor. So we're excited to join with him on the next episode. And Bala, I hope that you have a wonderful evening here today. We are recording this on a Friday, and we were talking earlier. It's sunny both in Texas and here in South Carolina. So we're both going to enjoy this, and hope that everybody else out there has a great and safe day. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all the downloads. I do want to hear from you guys out there now. So if you want to send me an email, I'd appreciate it. info@physicianwealthsystems.com. you have any questions about Bala, we can direct you to the TEDx talk. We can stay in contact with him and get his website out as well, too, that interesting discussion we had on concussion care. So info@physicianwealthsystems.com. So thank you for listening to another episode of Real Estate Mogul MD. Please send us an email, info@physicianwealthsystems.com. Thanks again, Bala. Have a great evening, man.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.